Greetings farmers and friends, and welcome to another exciting edition of AgriScope. AgriScope is a production of the Communications Unit at the Department of Agriculture and is brought to you in collaboration with your family station, ZIZ. This is your host, Eric Brown, urging you to stay tuned as we explore the intriguing world of agriculture. Water is one of the most essential elements needed to guarantee adequate yields from our crops. The supply of this valuable commodity is by no means unlimited. Therefore, adequate usage is required to ensure its continued benefits. Drip irrigation is one of the most efficient methods of water usage in agriculture in terms of conservation and delivery to the plants. In an effort to enhance the use of this method of irrigation, the Department of Agriculture, in collaboration with IECA, hosted a workshop for farmers and technical staff at the Department of Agriculture. The workshop was facilitated by Mr. Augustine Merchant, IECA representative here on St. Kitts. In today's program, we share with you the remarks of Mr. Ashton Stanley, Director of Agriculture, as he addressed the participants of this workshop.
Welcome to the Department of Agriculture, as this is part of our mandate to share information with farmers in an effort to help in the production and productivity of their farms. Let me say thanks to Raquel, who is the lead person on one of our farmers' association or farmers group in St. Peter's at Odgies, and who were beneficiaries to PAHO CFNI project. Say also special thanks to Mr. Merchant, who is the ICA rep on St. Kitts and Nevis, who has also been instrumental in getting the funds for that particular project. Welcome to all farmers, staff here at this training workshop. And notwithstanding the fact that the funds for this training workshop was for a particular group of farmers, I think it would have been selfish of us to only include those farmers in a training exercise that many farmers, staff could have benefited from. And so we took the initiative to invite several other persons, of course, targeted, who would be, in some aspect, be involved in irrigation of farms. I suppose that this particular workshop is centered around irrigation and perhaps water for agriculture. We know that water for agriculture is a talked about issue in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I am advised also that on Nevis that they are making efforts to have a separate water system for agriculture. Good effort at an exorbitant amount of cost. Exclusive from the domestic supply of the water in Nevis. Nevis is making an effort to have water, pipe-borne water, exclusive for agriculture. On St. Kitts, we have resorted to the construction of dams and, of course, collaborating with the water department for the same thing. We have recognized that to increase productivity, and to extend production beyond the few months that we are accustomed to traditionally, that water is an imperative. Water supports all forms of life, including agriculture and crops. We would see that sometimes, depending on where you are, you'll plant your crops, they would flower, but they will not set fruits. Sometimes it is too hot. The plant has triggered what you call a protective mechanism of survival to go into a reproductive phase it requires much more nutrients and energy so the plant begin to survive on its own in the absence of water and in the presence of too much heat. So what are we going to do on St. Kitts and Nevis? See, I'm not leaving out Nevis. Nevis has made inroads into something, and on St. Kitts, we are constructing dams. And as I said before, collaborating with the water department for more water. There is no policy on St. Kitts for water. So the first thing I think we need to do is to have a water policy for agriculture. The policy on St. Kitts for water for agriculture. So we need to have a policy for water for agriculture so that we could project our demands and, of course, source the demand. There is no secret that the water supply on St. Kitts is becoming less and less and less. We all live here. We notice that there is expansion in the tourism sector. There is expansion in houses and so forth and so forth. If you know how much water you use in your house per day, then you will have an estimate. Well, per person, you will have an idea of the volume of water that is required. And I believe sometimes when at the policy level, the decision has to be made that they would choose to provide the water for domestic use. And so that we have to develop alternative means of harnessing water for agriculture. Critically also, we must remember that we are faced with climate change. And although the Caribbean islands or the West Indies or whatever are not largely responsible for what is going on with respect to climate change, when the rain fall or it don't fall, it affects everybody. Sometimes it is too much, sometimes it is too little, and sometimes there is none at all. We would be mindful of the drought that we experienced, I think, 2 years ago, that utterly devastated our white potato and onion crops. Heavy investment by farmers. If we had water, access to water, and at affordable prices, I believe that these circumstances could have been prevented. And so, some of the effects that we would have by climate change, of course, is the droughts. Sometimes we're going to have too much water. And as I just indicated, our water supply, our groundwater supply is becoming less and less. And if we continue to extract water from those aquifers, what we have is a process of saltwater intrusion. Because in the aquifer, the salt water is to the bottom and the fresh water is to the top. Because there's a different density in the two. So just like water and oil, there's difference in the density. So the oil floats on top. The same thing with salt and seawater. So if you continue to take out the fresh water, you will end up with salt water, which is undesirable. You'll destroy the aquifer. And so it was just last week, Friday, that the Prime Minister declared the lands over there in the St. Kitts Wellfield as a protected area because I think it's over 40% of the water that is used in Bastille comes from that area. And so it is important that these aquifers now become recharged. And how are they recharged? They're recharged by water. But there are other developments on the landscape. There's the construction of houses, there's the construction of roads, the removal, the cane is gone, and so the water rushes down to the sea. With great force, great speed, taking a lot of the same soil that you want, the topsoil for agriculture. So not only water, it's a whole dynamic array of issues that surrounds water. So when we construct our houses, we need to construct our houses with proper roads, and the term that we use, you need recharge facilities, so that there must be a green space so that the water will run inside there and soak back down in the soil and go down in the aquifer. But if this is not happening, if you just have house and concrete, the water go into the sea. So in the overall planning with respect to water, is not just to say we're connected to the domestic supply of water. It has to be a national plan. Housing must be in it, agriculture must be in it, sustainable development, environment, all the players must come together. Because if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and you're not doing what you're supposed to, in the end, it's not going to happen. The last thing I want to talk about is your personal involvement. I will say your personal involvement. The government has made provision for the reduction of water for agriculture, half of the domestic rate. So I think you move from $16 or $15 to about $8 per 1,000 gallon for agriculture. So once you're connected, once the water department is satisfied that there is enough water in a particular area and you could get access, you would be connected. Of course, it has to be recommended by the Department of Agriculture. So your personal involvement, I would want to think, is your management to the water. Not because you're getting the water at a cheaper rate. You need to manage the water. And if you don't need to irrigate, then don't put on the pipe. And sometimes you may need to put a lock on your pipe because somebody might be using more water than you, and you will have to pay. Of course, we know of the circumstances surrounding livestock, and people would want to water their animals there. But of course, it could be an understanding. You use, you help me pay. So I'm not saying don't allow anybody to use the water, but it could be collaborative. So that is what I would want to say in your personal management in terms of water on your farms. There are other systems that you could use. I would want to think that there would be water light in the workshop that you could use for water management, but I wanted to emphasize your personal involvement, not just what they're telling you, but you have to exercise prudent management of your water resource. Welcome to the Department of Agriculture. I hope the training exercise will benefit you. And of course, we will continue from the Department of Agriculture to collaborate with Water Department to see how we could make more water available. Because be it as it may, as old people usually say, we are constructing the dams. But while we are constructing the dams, it is in the hot period or when no rain is falling that you require the water. And it is in that period that you will have a lot of evaporation from the ponds. So you see, in our context, we are faced with many, many, many challenges. Because the water is open, the sun is going to dry it out. In addition to that, we have to be careful when we use the dams in terms of the silt, sand, or whatever debris, that it will come down in the line, it will block the emitters to go to the irrigation. So it has to be a constant management or cleaning or whatever of the facility so that it works properly. But I would want to think that you would learn as you go. It is an experience. It may not be the best solution to what we're having, but we will learn as we go. And I don't want to deter anybody and say, oh, it is not going to work. It is not going to work. Let us try something. We are trying, and I hope that you would appreciate what we are doing. Thank you very much.
This brings us to the end of our program today. If you have any comments or query for us, you can write us at AgriScope in care of Department of Agriculture, Box 39, Lagreed, Basseterre. Or you can drop us a line at email doastk@gmail.com. You can even contact us at telephone number 465-2335. This is your host Eric Brown, reminding you to support homegrown, our very own. Happy farming.